Carolyn, so much. And thank you, everybody who's here. I know Mairead said that she was not able to join us today. And I think Tracy's there. She's trying to connect. But I did want to start out by acknowledging that last time we met on December 16th, our co-chair, Mark McGoldrick, wasn't with us, but we didn't know why he wasn't with us, and now we do. So I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge Mark's untimely and tragic passing on December 13th. And I'll just say that I didn't know Mark before we were named as co-chairs of this task force, and so I was, uncertain of how we would work together, not having ever met him before. But from our very first meeting, he was just so pleasant and easygoing and knowledgeable about the system and the industry. And most of all, he was really dedicated to making enhancements in the system, and mostly to make improvements that would improve the lives of consumers and their families. And I think that really came through. It came through for me, and I think for all of you and those who are watching our proceedings. So I will miss Mark, and I wanted to send our condolences as a task force to his family and loved ones. And I know that the General Assembly is reeling right now from another tragic loss. But I just wanted to take some time at the beginning of this meeting to acknowledge and recognize Mark's passing and his contributions to this task force and our work. And also, I'd like to open it up if there are other folks who knew him or didn't, or just knew him through this task force. If there's anything that you wanted to say or share about Mark before we move forward into the meeting. If you do, that's great. And if you don't, that's okay too. Because, Leslie, do you have your hand up, Leslie?
I do. Now I just need to remember to raise it. Lower, I mean. Our agency has worked with Mark throughout the last few years, and he was always very dedicated to not just this issue because of his role in the industry, but also because he truly cares about the families and the clients, and really wanted to make a difference. And he was always just a phone call away, always there, willing to give his input. And even when we didn't agree, we respectfully disagreed. And he always recognized, as did we, that we were all looking to achieve the same goal ultimately. So he will be missed. We will really miss the input and his compassion for this industry. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Leslie. And Tracy?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Just quickly, Mark's company, Comfort Keepers, was not a member of our association, but I got to know Mark because he was the chair of the other association in Connecticut, Home Care Association of America, Connecticut chapter. We frequently did connect with each other to work on certain issues legislatively as well as policy. So I did get to know him, fairly well over the last couple of years as well. And I agree with what both of you are saying, always always quite the gentleman and thoughtful and certainly dedicated to the people of Connecticut. So just want to raise him up and thank him.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. So maybe we would just take like a moment of silence to all think about Mark and send condolences to his family, and then we'll start the meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for that. I just want to say something about who's here and who's not. I think I mentioned in the beginning, we did receive word from Mairead that she didn't think she could join us. I don't know if she sent that to everybody or just me. Oh, she sent it to everybody, Christy. Okay, so so you saw that, and I know Lewis hasn't been able to join for a while. He's not here, but I think everybody else is here. I do just want to note Pamela Brown is on, and she has joined us previously in the past, and a couple of other folks from DCP are on. I just want to acknowledge Maureen Magnan, who's the Deputy Commissioner, and Julianne Avalone. Hey, Maureen. And Julianne, I think, is an attorney there, and she may have joined us in the past too.
I am. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so so that's great. And Anna has to leave at 1. Okay, so I think we did know that, Anna, and so let's try to get through as much as we can, and make sure you have an opportunity to weigh in. And we did think that starting with the report that was sent out by Cameron for for everyone's consideration, we should start with that and just see where and if there are concerns, changes that ought to be made. And I do just want to note that looking at it as I did before the meeting, I noticed that there were in several places we talk about caregivers, and I know that when we had gone through it before, we were going to change most of those places unless it was a substantive issue to service providers or another term like that, because that was raised as a concern by DCP previously, and we had I think that we had gone through and caught them in most places, but I think there were a couple of other places where we didn't catch them. So we will make those changes. But Cameron has teed us up now to the introduction, and I just wanted to see if anyone has concerns or comments or anything about the introduction. And let me just also say that I know that Tracy sent, and maybe it was just to me and Sheldon and Cameron, but some background that she thought it was missing, and I agree, some background information about the consumer population, and the need for these services is increasing because the aging of the population in Connecticut, and it's projected to continue to increase. And so Tracy had sent something out that were national figures that maybe we could include something in the introduction. I actually forwarded that to some folks at OPM that know about this, and they might have some Connecticut specific data that we could put in. But if that's okay with everybody, we will just, stick to the facts, but just, what is the what is the population at risk of needing homemaker companion services look like now and in the future. So if anyone has a concern about us adding something there, you should say so. If you have anything
and
yeah, Tracy.
I'm sorry. I remember, Leslie, when you did your DCP presentation back on October 21st, I know you had a slide that had graph on it with projected. Was that, I wanted to go back to that. Was that Connecticut only?
Yeah, that was projected census data in Connecticut. Yes.
Okay, well, maybe we can pull that up rather than having
the
presentation just be linked to in the website. We can pull something up from there. Okay, anything else in the introduction? Sheldon?
Yeah, this was flagged over the weekend, but by I think Anne, is that there's a math problem in the paragraph in the introduction that starts lastly. It's going from 380 to over 900 is an increase of about 137% or something, or almost 150. So we need to.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I thought it was 237, but somebody who's better at math than me can I wanted to put 137 there as a placeholder, and we will have somebody do the math on that. 137. Anna's saying that's correct, so great.
Yeah, maybe get rid of then get rid of the nearly. It's about, maybe say about.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, anything else in the introduction that folks wanted to raise? Okay, that's great. Sheldon, your hand is still up. I'm assuming that's just
sorry. Yep, sorry.
Okay, so we will move forward then out of the introduction to the section on. Oh, Leslie, do you have something in the introduction?
No. I was jumping ahead to the next section.
Okay. So meeting proceedings and presentations. So this is where we just outline what our process was, and that's where the link to the task force webpage is. And Leslie, what did you want to say about this section?
I would just request that having listened to Senator Miller during her comments during that time, and this is, I know, going to feel nitpicky probably for many of you, so I apologize, but it's as you know, a point of concern for us that that you insert in the sentence, the last sentence of the second paragraph, Senator Miller, sponsor of the bill creating the task force, reinforced the importance of the task force's assignment, asking them to focus on the needs of those requiring home and community-based care. I would request that services be inserted there.
Sure.
Because she herself talked about the need to use the word services at one point during our meeting. So I don't have an objection to leaving care, but as long as services is included, I would request that be added. So community-based services or care through HCAs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that work? Okay. Thank you, Cameron, for changing things on the fly. Okay. Anything else in this section? And this section is where the link to the DCP and I think DPH presentations are, and Tracy summarized what was in there. So I think that it's reflective of what was in the presentation. Anything
and we
else?
could add that demographic data in the bullets for the DCP presentation here if you want. Unless I think it would be helpful to reinforce it at the beginning of the introduction. But I think if we pull it into these bullets as well, it might be helpful.
Yeah,
it was one of their slides.
I'm actually noticing that the 60% increase is also in this.
Yeah,
Part. If you
it
go
might have
down
been
a
in
little
the
bit right there.
presentation. Yeah, so you're right.
May have been our math.
So, yeah, that would be fine. So we would be what you're suggesting is that we would be adding information from the presentation about the demographics. Okay.
Yeah, and I can go back and look at it, or Leslie, whatever, but I tried to, these bullets are kind of in order of the presentation. So we probably should insert it at the appropriate spot.
Okay. So Cameron has just put a note there that we will do that. Leslie, is your hand still up, or?
Yes, my hand is up again. Sorry. I'm better now at lowering it. I'm getting there, 6 meetings later. I just had a request for under the summary of DPH's presentation, which I thought was very good. And Tracy, I think you did a great job. Thank you in capturing all of this. I was hoping that we could know, my recollection from DPH's presentation was that they noted that these agencies and the home care agencies, the home health agencies, which is what they're called in other states, were all regulated under the same umbrella, which I think is a distinction that also should be noted, because that is a piece of sort of a theme throughout this. But when we talk about how other states have tiered licensing and their scope is different, I didn't see in here, maybe I missed it, anything that sort of noted the fact that in other states the regulatory entity is singular.
I want to hear what other folks say. I would be concerned about doing that without the opportunity to go back and look and make sure that was.
That's fair. I don't have a problem with that, but it would be if someone to go
we
back
are
and double check.
We do link right there to their presentation.
Yeah. If that could just be double checked, I'm happy to do that and send an email around after too. I just haven't had a chance to, since I reviewed this.
Tracy, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I do believe that many of them that are regulated in other states are regulated by their Department of Public Health or Health, whatever it's known as in that state. But I also know that there are some that are regulated by like an aging, not an aging committee, but an elder department, so it's not a health department. So I do think it's important for us to make sure we get that right. I'm pretty sure it's not all, but perhaps you could say many of those that are regulated in other states are regulated under the same department who regulates home health. I think that would be fair.
I would be comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with that too, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to just add that at the end, or where does anybody care where it goes?
Well, it already said, let's see, of other states reviewed, many have a tiered licensing program. Okay. And it could say right there, many have a tiered licensing program under the Department of Public Health, under their Department of Health.
Okay.
That probably captures it.
Do we want to say Department of Public Health?
No, because it is different in different states.
Okay. All right. Maria, did you want to respond on this?
Well, I wanted to add one other item, and I'm not an expert on all the different states licensing, but I have heard that in most states that require licensing, it's more for the personal care and the hands-on as opposed to lesser services. And I don't know if there's a way to find out how true that is before we, get too far into this vein. I don't know if Tracy would know about that. Were you able to hear me?
Around this weekend, that was the National Home Care Association of America report. They had the map. I don't know if we can, there was a map of the United States that stated who was licensed and who wasn't. But I do think that most of them, that report did focus, Maria, a lot on the personal care and not necessarily a companion type role.
I just think it might be helpful to put that in there if that is true.
Well, yeah, I guess the first question is it true? And
Right.
I just want to remind folks that this is the meeting where we have to vote on, kind of the final language on the report. So I'm concerned about our ability to go back and kind of look at the presentation. Is there something you want to suggest, Maria, based on your recollection? Or I'm not sure.
I don't know that it's a suggestion. Yeah, I just feel that it would be, maybe we can just point out that in most states the licensing is related to personal care services. That's what I have been told by people that people from my franchise, as an example, who have.
But was that part of the presentation? Because this is where we're kind of describing Department of Public Health's presentation.
That's a good point. I don't know that they pointed that out here in Connecticut.
Yeah, I don't recall that from their presentation, and I know that
Gotcha.
Tracy did summarize the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is particularly about.
Gotcha. Okay,
so maybe we put that.
We can leave it. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Leslie.
Okay, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I took. Oh,
No. Okay.
sorry, I thought I lowered.
Okay. All right. So far we have looked at the summary of DCP and DPH presentations, and then there's a brief summary here about the public hearing. And is everybody okay with that section? Oh, Michael.
Thank you. Can you just, I'm sorry, but I was just looking at my paperwork and I missed something. Can you just scroll up, please? I don't know if it was addressed. It's a little bit more to last. Okay, stop right there. I'm looking at the, what I'm looking at is the paragraph that says home health aid is an unlicensed person or successfully completed. I think one of the issues here, and I immediately raised my interest, is it says competency evaluation program for Homemaker home health aides. So right there, I see an issue because, we're talking about technically what we do, homemakers and companions, and then it's a big, it's such a crazy topic because the majority of homemaker companion agencies do employ home health aides. Probably 80% of our roster has their certificates, but we just can't advertise it. We can certainly explain to the potential client how it works, but I don't kind of understand. It doesn't kind of make sense. Homemaker home health aid, that the health, should that be excluded, or does that make sense to you? Saying, that's basically saying we do employ home health aides. you know, we're really homemaker and companions, per DCP.
So,
You understand where I'm coming from?
well, let me try and frame what I'm hearing is that DPH has two categories, home health aid.
Kind of don't recognize it, so it's affiliated with home health aides. Like because home health aides are trained, and homemakers and companions aren't. So
But
that's
don't
where
they have a homemaker home health aid?
Yeah, and you want me to clarify?
Yes,
yeah,
yes, go ahead.
please.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So the first bullet, home health care agencies, HHAs, and homemaker home health aid agencies. Those are the two current classified or licensure classifications under the Department of Public Health. And in order to work for either one of those, the aid level that would work for them would be known as the home health aid. Or historically under that homemaker home health aid, they would be a homemaker / home health - home health aid. And under DPH, in order to be qualified to be a homemaker home health aid, they have to go through a specific training with competency to be able to work under DPH. It does not have anything to do with qualifications under a homemaker companion agency. If you hire a home health aide under a homemaker companion agency, you can choose to do that, but that's not a role that's recognized under DCP. So that goes into the advertising issues that I think DCP has concerns about. So it's really a home health aide is only recognized under the DPH licensure of either a home health agency or a homemaker home health aid agency. And they have to complete a specific training and competency in order to be qualified to work.
Thank you, Tracy. And I think that is representative of what DPH presented. And Michael, I don't know if your concern being raised is that it might be confusing in this report because they kind of went beyond, the registration of homemaker companion agencies to talk about these related kinds of licensing. So is that, but I think it is fairly true to what DPH did present. So Michael,
Should it say home health aide is an unlicensed person who works or I don't know. It says by DPH, but I would add a hyphen where it says homemaker home health aid because that's how it's recognized, homemaker - home health aid per DPH.
okay. Leslie, did you want to say anything about this?
I just wanted to sort of agree with you and Tracy's assessment of this, and this is what DPH presented. I do think, though, Michael, to your point, this is part of the reason why there's so much confusion with consumers. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And yes. Okay. So are there, given that, are there any specific changes to this section that folks wanted to see made? And if not, we'll go further down, Cameron, to the next part, which is the public hearing. Everybody was okay with this brief mention of the public hearing. I think that there's an appendix. Well, let's go to the next section if everybody is fine with that, because there were then issues and concerns that were presented to the task force at the public hearing. Leslie, are you on this section now? Are you on?
Yes, I
have
am.
your hand up.
Yes, I do. Under this next section, issues and concerns presented to task force, I have a response.
Okay, sure.
The third paragraph, additional information gathered from other states and their processes to regulate or oversee this level of, I would request again, inserting services or care. Because that is, again, there's a whole scope that goes from services to care that was reviewed.
And remember, Anne, this was the section that we weren't sure if we were going to be adding. This was a paragraph, remember, we put in if we do add those other reports that I sent around this weekend.
Right. So I guess we should stop there and see if folks had an opportunity to look at what you sent around, and whether we should include them as part of an appendix to this report. And I'll just say I have mixed feelings because they were just sent this weekend. And so I totally understand if people didn't have an opportunity and feel uncomfortable including that. But we discussed it with Tracy, and I suggested she send it around to everybody. It is some background information that might be useful to policymakers as they're looking at the report. So I will open it up for discussion about whether folks feel comfortable with this being added as an appendix, I think, or what your thoughts are. Tracy, did you want to say anything? Oh, hi, Mairead. Glad you're with us.
Sorry,
Tracy, did you want to just say anything briefly framing what it was that you sent?
Sure. There were two documents, and they both came to me at the end of the week when we were putting together all this information. One was the Massachusetts Alliance, my counterpart in Massachusetts, who created a credentialing process or accreditation process, I should say, for optional for, I think they call it private care services in Massachusetts. And they have some 400 agencies in Massachusetts. There is no licensure in Massachusetts. So their association group decided it would be good to create a credentialing process so that agencies that chose to get credentialed could apply and do so as a notch in their belt of a higher, to be looked at as an agency that follows the standards and best practice and higher quality. So that I put that around just to see if that's anything that, I know it's late to the table, but I wanted you to see it, that exists. Then the other piece that I got on Friday was from the Home Care Association of America. I was not aware that they produced this pretty lengthy resource document January 2022. So it's very current. Addresses the pandemic impact as well as just the projected growth and need for services in the home, and it differentiates between home care, home health care, and hospice. And it also had that map of the United States showing which states have regulations, which don't. So I just thought it was a helpful document to give some resources.
Yeah, and so we're not taking any kind of stand on anything in there. We would just, I guess the motion would be to include it as an appendix, so that this kind of information is all in one place for policymakers. So Mairead and then Anna.
Good afternoon. I would agree that having it as a resource is important because we've all worked in this area. Many of us have worked in this area for years and years, and we learned so much during this process about definitions, who calls what a different thing. And I think the more information we have and the more we can provide decision makers with that information, the closer we'll get to really clear and distinct outcomes from this. So I would vote to have it added, just again, as a resource page, as an appendix of some kind.
Okay, Anna? Thank you.
So one thing, the Home Care Association of America document, I really liked the chart, Tracy, that you included sort of as a copy and paste in the email, except that I came away from it a little bit more confused because it didn't use the language of Homemaker Companion. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to use that format, but Connecticut's specific language, or if we do link to that document, though, maybe have an asterisk next to it to note that that somehow the sort of terms within Connecticut statute don't align with all of the terms that are discussed in that document. I'm not sure. There was so much that I liked about it, but also I kept trying to figure out, well, where does it say Homemaker Companion? Where, does that fall in the home care column or another one? So that was my one concern with that document.
Okay, and certainly if we do include it, we could say here in this paragraph that it's, it's just informational, and that the categories don't align with what we currently have in Connecticut. Leslie, and then Tracy.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said about this. I do think this is very helpful information. In fact, I found this report probably like a month ago when I was doing a little research myself, and I thought it was very interesting. But to Anna's point, sort of was trying to wrap my head around it, since it is not the statutory framework we currently have. I do think it's important for policymakers to understand what's going on elsewhere. But I also think one of the things that's sort of not reflected in this report as it is, which maybe could be, if we wanted to add this information in the addendum to sort of, or the appendix to give, policymakers food for thought, is the fact that the statutory sort of framework that we have and that was intentionally written the way it was to keep, the DPH, sort of healthcare piece separate. And it's why even the mention of the word care doesn't exist anywhere in the HCA statutes. So I feel like on our end, as we've struggled, as you all know, with this issue when it comes to complaints and confusion with consumers in this area, we've come up with this bright line sort of distinguishment. I don't know what the word is anymore. Sorry, I'm tired. But this bright line to distinguish between what DCP does and what DPH does. And the sort of bright line we've come up with is services versus care, because we can't come up with something that sort of is any better based on the statutory framework. And so I would just say that this might be a good place to add with the asterisk that that's sort of that's why our framework is the way it is. But that's all I would ask. I think it's fine the more information for policymakers to look at and to understand what's going on around the country, the better, I think. But I just think it's also really important for policymakers to understand why the law was passed the way it was in 2006.
Okay, so let's hear from Tracy and Sheldon, and then we can see if we want to rework this paragraph and then link to something in an appendix. So Tracy first, and then Sheldon.
Yeah, so I think part of this task force's responsibility is to look at exactly what Leslie just brought forward, in that, the regulations were set up or the statute was set up in 2006, and it's 23 now. And the rest of the country is using the term care and home care. is a very common term throughout the rest of the country. So I'd hate to see us not moving forward. I'd love to see us trying to come up with a way to help us, and we're looking at that through the recommendations, help us work toward what is needed for the future. And if care is what's needed for the future, maybe there's some way we can figure it out moving forward. So I just hate to see that we are the only state that uses Homemaker Companion. And I know why, and Leslie makes it very clear why it was set up that way. But trying to look to the future. So that's all.
Okay, Sheldon?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the language to use here. I think that from what I heard, there's two things that need to be stated. Something, it's okay the way it is, but then one sentence maybe that says the materials reflect different regulatory frameworks and terminology used nationally, something like that. And then the other point is that I don't, given people having a chance to review it and everything, and I'll admit that I looked at it and saw some things that concerned me a little bit. I would like some language that says the task force is not endorsing, anything in either of these materials, just some disclaimer like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. And Leslie, you have you put your hand down.
No, yeah,
Okay.
I think
So-
that's great. I'm sorry, I would just add sort of used in other states instead of nationally, just because nationally may sort of suggest some sort of federal thing where it's really other states.
Okay, so
Thank you.
let's for Cameron to be able to write something down. What we currently have is additional information gathered from other states and their processes to regulate or oversee this level of services is included in what are we going to say, like appendix whatever? Cameron would now see. And we'll say that the service categories used in other states don't necessarily align with the current system in Connecticut, and the task force doesn't necessarily endorse. Yeah, please, if anybody has a better way to say it, please speak up. But I think it's the service categories really that's that issue, right? Used in other states do not necessarily align with the terms in use in Connecticut, and the task force is not endorsing. Does not endorse these approaches, but they are provided for informational purposes.
I would suggest being a little broader and just say the task force does not endorse anything in these materials. I mean,
Okay,
otherwise we might be owning something.
great. Okay. But they are provided for informational purposes. Correct? Anybody else? Okay.
Do you want to say where it says the service categories used in other states as outlined in the materials? I mean, or is that obvious that
Sure.
we're talking about this?
That's fine. No, that's fine. Okay. Anything else here that folks wanted to see? And so this will now become Appendix C. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Cameron, and everyone. So now we're going to move on to the recommendations, and that's good. It's before 1 o'clock. I might just throw it open to Anna because I know she has to leave in 10 minutes. Was there anything in the recommendations, Anna, that you objected to? Okay. Great.
Yeah, no objections. And the one big note that I had was you kicked off with it was the use of the word caregiver.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for taking.
So, and as we go through, if people see that used, we can make that change right here with Cameron. So, what we can go section by section here, and talk about the first. Okay, let me just say one thing. As you recall, the way we have structured the recommendations is to align with our charge in the charge to the task force in the Public Act. So what we did was take the 6 categories, the 5 or 6 categories that legislators charged us to look at and come up with recommendations on, and we have them in that same order as they are in the statute. But what we would like to do once we finish going through and making sure everybody is on board with everything here is to have a little vote. Cameron has set that up so that we can vote about what would be our priorities, because as we know, these are a lot of recommendations, and not everything can be worked on and enacted in one legislative session. That would be unusual. So we wanted to have an opportunity to say what were the priorities. And so we will be doing that after this. So let's go through the recommendations. And were there any, the items that are highlighted in green are items that require allocation of resources. So Cameron is highlighting that we do have that there. And DCP did send fiscal note to us, and Cameron has included it at the end, which we'll look at. But everything in green, I'm hoping I just got it, so we just stuck it in, and I think that everything in green should be addressed in an appendix. So we'll get to that at the end. So was there anything under qualification and registration criteria that anyone had a concern about? You want to keep going down? Okay, anything in that section? Yeah, Leslie? Are you speaking? Because you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
I know, I'm sorry. My computer is like very slow. So when I go to do something, sometimes there's a lag. I'll also lower my hand. On expand permitted services, I just want to make sure, I want to just say a couple of things. And I understand that this is sort of, we have been very clear on this, so I just want to make sure.
Can we go back up, Cameron, just so we're looking at what she's talking about?
Expand permitted services.
The second
Yep.
dark bullet, yeah.
We have no problem with clarifying the scope of services, and that's sort of subject to debate by policy makers to sort of figure out. But renaming, as you know, we had a pretty heated discussion about this, respectfully heated, but nevertheless heated. And I would request that, there would be some, DCP just, again, has very strong sort of concerns about going from the name Homemaker companion agencies to anything that uses the word care. So again, that being the bright line that we use now as the distinction between DPH and DCP regulated entities. So understanding that may change, I just want to make sure that it's clear that we have real concerns about that. And that's all. I think the rest of it, PCA assistant role should be clearly defined. Well, that's sort of like defined as what? So I feel like that's sort of ambiguous enough, but But that one piece about renaming, especially we are concerned about the PCA piece as well, but because it's the way it's written is sort of left for policymakers to figure out. So it's a little bit different.
Okay, and I do think that there are
And yeah.
strong
Yep.
feelings
Agreed.
on both sides of this, which we tried to bridge by saying or service, home care or home
Right,
service.
but the services are in parens. The services are parenthetical, whereas the care is sort of there.
Okay,
And
so
there is a big difference from our perspective. That's all.
so let me ask this: would you be okay if we took the parentheses off? Would that get you on board with the recommendation? So that it was clear that it's either or. It's not just something else tacked on. It's clear it could be care or service.
My only concern is, and I guess maybe there's a place for this, so forgive me if I'm trying to remember how this works, but my only concern is that somehow then we've signed off on this when we are very concerned about the word care. And so if it's not reflected anywhere that DCP, why, it's sort of this bright line distinction, that may be, the policymakers may look at this and then turn around. I've had this happen to me in the past. That's all. I'm a little sensitive to
Sure.
then having committee members of the aging committee or some other committee say, but you signed off on this. You didn't express any concern. So that's why I feel like I need to sound like a broken record. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, we can handle this in a couple of different ways. So you tell me what you prefer. One is that we can leave it as it is and note that DCP does not support, very clearly that DCP does not support this recommendation, or we can take the parentheses out if no one minds. And I don't know, it sounds like you're still not going to support it.
Yeah, I think probably we're better off just noting that this is not something
Okay.
that anytime if they use, and that's fine. We can explain why, as long as there's a note so that there's no confusion when they see who the task force members are.
Yep.
That's fine.
So Cameron, right at the end of business, they better reflect the nature of business. Oh, yeah, there. Can we put in italics or something that would differentiate it from being part of the recommendation and just say DCP opposes this recommendation? Is that you tell me, Leslie?
Yeah, DCP, opposes any name change that includes the word care would be fine. That would be
Perfect.
great.
Okay, so I see Anna and Sheldon have their names up, their hands up. So why don't you start, Anna?
Yeah, and I think Leslie raises a really good point here that would it be possible to have maybe a general disclaimer that support of the overall task force report doesn't necessarily indicate that an agency or an organization would endorse every single recommendation, or I mean, just to differentiate an organization's support for the overall process and the recommendations of the report without necessarily obligating us to then proactively, weigh in support of all of these.
So I'd be open to hearing what other task force members have to say about that. I would be reluctant to take that kind of a broad-based approach, because then I feel that it really weakens the entire report, because it doesn't identify specifically, that everybody agreed except in certain cases. So I'm reluctant to take that approach, but I'm happy to hear from others. I know Sheldon, you have your hand up, and now Michael does as well.
I was gonna say something else, but my response is to agree with Ann. I think that if there's anything like this one where a task force member or their employer does not support something, just say it, make it clear. That's my view. I had two suggestions on this. The first is, this is a recommendation. It's unanimous among all other members. So if we're going to include this, which I'm fine with saying, it's accurate to say DSS opposes any name change. I think it would be good to say something that's otherwise everybody else agrees. I don't know how to do that exactly, but just
I just want to say, I think that is understood, that the places where we're making a note, if some entity disagrees, that then the assumption is that everybody else agrees. I don't.
could we?
And I'm also concerned, like Lewis isn't here. I just would be concerned about making that kind of a blanket statement every time.
Well, how about saying in the beginning? How about just a blanket statement that says, unless indicated, all task force members support.
Yeah, I just don't know what we do about, Lewis isn't here.
I assume he's going to review it and sign off by email. Is that?
I don't know. I don't know that to be the case.
I know he read it. I can ask him to make sure he submits.
Well, anyway, that would be my recommendation. That
Okay.
Stan says in the beginning.
Sure.
The other
we could
question.
say something like that at the beginning of this section. But I want to hear from Michael and Leslie first.
Just one other. I had one other.
Yep.
Which is, I'm just asking this question. I'm not insisting on it, but if or service was added to address DCP's concerns specifically, and DCP is saying, we don't agree with the whole thing, is that still appropriate to include that? I just wasn't sure.
Yes, I from my perspective, it would be yes, because that is another alternative that would work for some folks. That would work for me. I'll just speak for myself. So Michael and then Leslie, and go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. I believe one, as less confusion as possible moving forward. And I mean, nationally, every state recognizes the word care. The public recognizes the word care. We have the Home Care Association of America. I mean, it doesn't say Home Services Association of America. I don't have much of a problem adding service if the DCP likes that, but I think without question the word care should be included. But I also brought up the point where the word care is used really everywhere, each and every day in our industry. And even look at my franchise. I mentioned it's executive home care. There's probably at least 100 agencies in the state that has the word care in it. And so now if the word care is, if it's supposed to be just services, are we supposed to all change our names to executive home services? That's
No.
kind of like, those are my feelings. I strongly believe that the word care should be in there.
And I think that's the recommendation as it is. There is no recommendation for everyone to change their name to services. So yeah, the recommendation as it stands kind of allows two different options. The main option here being renaming Homemaker companion agencies to non-medical home care agencies. And that is in line, I think, with what other states are doing. But this recommendation does not This is just about the statutory and regulatory framework for the agencies. This is not about what individual agencies call themselves, although that may be something else entirely, but it's not in this recommendation. So does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. Leslie?
So first I feel like I need to just again say the issue we have obviously is trying to have that bright line distinction. And while it's the Home Care Association of America and other states are doing what they're doing, it's also clear that in many of those other states, the non-medical services still fall under the same regulatory agency that the medical services are under. And so that's sort of a unique, I believe, distinction between Connecticut and what other states are doing, or at least some other states where the Home Care Association is active. So I do understand sort of that the world is changing since 2006. Absolutely, a lot in many, many ways. But it's why this is an important discussion to have, and why lawmakers should recognize that distinction and sort of figure it out, which is why I think it's important for us to flag our opposition, just to ensure that this is sort of really hashed out and thought through.
Okay. Thank you. And we all appreciate that clarification. And let me just say that that DCP has been, I think, very clear and very consistent in your messaging on this. So so thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so with regard to this, should we go back up to the beginning of the recommendations section and put something in there like Sheldon is suggesting, that unless otherwise noted, all task force members, support each of these recommendations? Anybody object to that or want that worded? Okay. Maria.
I just wanted to ask, is that normal? I haven't participated in this type of a task force before. So is that?
No, it's not.
Always
I don't think
added?
it is.
Okay.
And I am neutral about it. If folks think that it's unnecessary, I don't feel strongly about including that.
I guess I'm just a little on the fence because it makes me want to look at every single one, closely again, and I'm sure it might do that for others as well.
Okay, well, I'm happy to take that out, because I think that what's going to happen at the end of this is that we are all going to vote for putting this report forward as is, as we have just currently changed it with Cameron's help. And so by virtue of that vote, you are signaling that you support what's in the report. And that includes, places where it says DCP does not support this recommendation. So in order to make you and perhaps others more comfortable, I think perhaps we should just proceed in that manner. And I think it's pretty clear that task force recommendations are voted on by the entire task force. And so Sheldon?
Well, just a suggestion is, if that's the case, I mean, I do think it should be there. And because we do have this disagreement, and there's different ways. I mean, sometimes there's actually vote numbers are stated, somebody voted for, somebody voted against, whatever. But maybe what you just said, put that somewhere in the report, like in the beginning, to say it was voted on by the members. Because when you say that, that's true, but people don't know that. I mean, anybody reading this report wouldn't know that it was voted upon. So it'd be good if you could just say something about in the process section or something at the last. It said at the last meeting, the task force members voted to adopt the report. Would that be
Yes,
reasonable?
if that happens, I don't know if you want to, Cameron, go back and do that now in the process section, or you want to remember to do it at the end to just say, what do you want to say, Cameron?
I was just going to say, once the vote is completed on, if the draft, if the draft is voted upon in a positive manner and it passes, there will the final minutes for the last meeting will reflect the vote and the vote total.
And there will be a link to those in the report.
That can be linked in. Yes, it'll be on the main page, which is already linked there.
Yeah. Okay, Sheldon, is that okay with you? That it is reflected in the minutes that the report was adopted?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry, somebody's trying to call me, so there's a phone ring. The question, if we don't, in terms of process, since as you point out, Lewis isn't here, is there a way? And also, we have to add in the numbers, the demographic information. So there's still a little bit's going to be added. I just wanted to just ask, like, what the process should be to make sure we dot all the I's for A, people are not here, and B, these additions.
Do you have a recommendation?
I think I do. I think I would say let's take like a tentative vote at the end, and then say, you will be given the final report will be sent around, when Cameron's able to put it together, and this, and then the final, we'll need you to email confirmation that something like that.
Okay, so here's my hesitancy on that if somebody wants a minor change, then we have to send it around again and again. So I really would like to take a final vote today on adopting the report. We can include as part of that motion any technical changes that are necessary. For instance, if we find that there are typos or, the math was wrong or something like that. But I understand that not all of the members are going to be here for that vote. I worry about having an email exchange that then becomes a kind of a loop.
And maybe just give them those people who are not here, give them the opportunity to also vote, just like you said, but just also add that.
Sure.
Since you weren't
Sure.
there,
but with an end time.
Yeah.
And okay, yes, yes. So Cameron, are you okay with that? That we will send it to Anna and Mairead, who have left this meeting, and Lewis, who is not here. And ask them by a certain time to please indicate whether they are voting affirmatively to adopt the report.
I actually I was sending you that exact message in the chat when she spoke up on it. So
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we certainly do that. As long as you state during the meeting what that time limit is going to be, just
Sure.
say and everyone.
I don't know. But today is Monday, by Friday, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
You tell me, Cameron, because you're going to get this report in. It is dated January 9th, I notice. So you want to just give them 24 hours. I don't feel strongly. I will defer to Cameron about how long. No more than no less than 24 hours and no more than I don't know, 72 or something.
When I did this before with another task force, I believe it was 24 hours that we did then. So if there's an objection, we could extend it to 48 if anyone objects.
20, everybody okay with 24? Okay, great.
thank you. That's a great solution.
Okay. So we will keep going. We got through expand permitted services. Anything else in this section on qualifications? Okay. Complaint resolution.
I'm sorry, and I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand first. I did have one thing on the next bullet, because I thought you meant on required enhanced monitor. So I just, under expanded permitted services, on the last bullet, sorry, where it says enhanced state oversight of quality of services. I just,
Wait, I'm not with you. Oh, okay. Enhanced state oversight of quality of services. Got it.
I just have a little bit of a concern, because I think part of the confusion we've had with some of the testimony and before, and a lot of what I've read before and since this task force was established, sort of suggests there's sort of a language in statutes or regulation about quality of services sort of being regulated. And I feel like I'm not sure that there's a real language there that directs DCP about how to regulate for quality of services. So I feel like it's important, and it's an issue that's been, certainly discussed a lot. And I do think there does need to be sort of some kind of policy decision made there. I'm just not sure that I'm comfortable with the word enhance. I think state oversight of quality of services is important, but enhancing it suggests there is sort of something in statute now that really I don't think is when it comes to the regulation of quality of services.
So if we change the word enhance to provide, does that address, no, in the top one?
Right, yeah, because I don't have a problem with the rest of that section. I just think that's that one word is what sticks out to me.
Okay, other folks have any objection to that? Okay, great. So
I have one more thing, sorry, and then
no, that's fine.
this section, sorry. And that's just the bullet that says daily care notes should be written down and available for review by state and consumers. Again, the word care, I think notes are fine, but again, that's just the word care is there. And I feel like that's not.
So if we said daily notes, does
That's
that
fine.
work
Yeah.
for everyone? Any concern about that? Okay, terrific. Thank you all for being so agreeable. Go ahead. Anything else in that section, Leslie, or anyone else? I think we're missing.
And the only thing that and we probably should bring it before this group, is under that bullet, provide state oversight of quality of services, that last bullet that says state should conduct more frequent unannounced compliance audits. I do see in other states where there is a time frame.
Okay. But are you suggesting that we put a time frame in here? Because that would require some discussion. I mean, right now we know what it is, that the DCP has said that on average, there are 2 unannounced compliance audits done per week per investigator. So that's 4. So, and Leslie or anybody else from DCP, correct me if I'm wrong, Pam. I see Pam's on there.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. So we're just saying it should be more frequent than that. And we know we need more investigators in order to do that. But we're not taking a stand on whether that is 2 more per week or 20 more per week. And I think that's really appropriate, because I think that becomes kind of a budget negotiation issue. How much can is the state willing to put into the budget for more investigators to do that? Anybody else, or Tracy? I guess what I'm saying is I would be uncomfortable at this late date trying to figure out what that number should be. Tracy, anything more on that? Did we lose Tracy? Okay, I think we will keep moving forward then. I feel like Tracy must have dropped off. So we'll give her a chance to go back to that when she rejoins. Okay, anything, so this next section is, what is this next section here, Cameron? Complaints. So let's hear, is everybody okay with the section regarding complaint resolution recommendations? Great. Did we lose?
I'm raising my hand. I don't know.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not seeing you.
Huh.
So go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So
No.
my only concern about this language, or I have two concerns. One is immediate response. I think if it says complainant should receive immediate acknowledgement, I mean, that would be okay, but immediate response, what does that mean? Like, we receive a complaint. I definitely understand sort of addressing this issue, but I don't know what an immediate response means, and I have a concern. I think immediate acknowledgement might be a better word than response. A little,
okay.
The word immediate sort of, I don't know what immediate really means either, but at least acknowledgement I think would be better than response.
Okay.
Response may suggest that the resolution is also, even though there is a distinction here between immediate response and timely resolution, but that's the other concern I have is the word timely. What does timely mean? So I have concerns about this just based on I'm concerned that depending on what happens here, there might be then a thought or a belief that additional resources, if DCP gets additional resources, that somehow that means people complain and they think it's going to be resolved like immediately. And the problem is that even with some of the folks who testified at the public hearing, where I know there was a lot of concern by task force members, they don't know the whole story. They don't know the background. And these complaints are often not as simple as they appear. And they are often, there's a lot of complexity often to these complaints. And so I have a lot of concern, and especially, when we're dealing with other agencies and law enforcement, for example, is involved. So yes, a quick, an acknowledgement when we receive a complaint that's, done in a sort of, I guess, immediate way. I'm not sure again what the word immediate means, but then on the sort of timely resolution, I think that we have concerns about that, just because again, there's a lot of complexity there. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. So let me just ask, I see Sheldon has his hand up. I'll go to him in a minute, but would it be okay to say complaints should receive an immediate acknowledgement and timely resolution? I mean, I think we were very clear to say the resolution ought to be timely. And I understand that that's still, is subjective, but it's not an immediate resolution. I think that the point was immediate acknowledgement, but Sheldon, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, it's fine I agree to change to acknowledgement. That's what I think, that was my understanding what response meant. But this conversation has made me think that maybe when it says timely resolution, that phrase is fine. But to say and notification, because there was some of the testimony was about, we never got told, blah, blah, blah. And could we say timely resolution with notification to complainant?
I would be okay with that. Any objection from anybody that this would be changed to complaints should receive an immediate acknowledgement and timely resolution with notification to the complainant. Leslie, you still with us?
I am. I'm just thinking about it.
Okay.
Sorry. Again, I understand that we're not defining the word timely. So
Right.
yes, it's sort of because it's subjective.
Right.
I have no, I mean, I don't love that, but I do think with regard to this other piece where we then notify the complainant, I have concerns about that piece. I guess, Sheldon, could you elaborate what you mean by notifying the complainant after acknowledging an immediate?
Yeah,
I think he means
when-
after the resolution,
Right.
as part of the resolution, that the resolution includes notifying the complainant. So it's not just that you're resolving it or somebody is resolving it with the agency, but that the original complainant receives notice.
So I guess the question is, and I think this is part of the challenge we've had and where there's been confusion by those who testified as well, is let's say a complaint is filed and, we do acknowledge, and then we look into that complaint and there's that complaint is, say it's a quality of care complaint where we can't substantiate anything, so we close it. But based on when we looked into this, we see other things. So we open another case, which is not, which is sort of the result, the catalyst was this complaint. However, it's separate. I'm just a little bit concerned about this language because I think it sort of it's confusing, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's something we need to sort of. DCP has concerns with this.
Do you still have you have concerns after making this change about the immediate acknowledgement and timely, which is not defined resolution?
I don't. I think leaving it as immediate acknowledgement and timely resolution. I'm not as concerned about that since timely is not being defined. I don't love it, but because it's not defined, I feel like we can certainly, when you're dealing with something that's more complicated, then clearly timely has a different meaning than something that's simple. So.
Okay. So Tracy, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been trying to get back in on my computer and haven't been able to. I'm on my phone now. I look to, DPH has a process, and I don't believe there's anything in there about getting back to the complainant. But does it make sense? I know we have to vote on this. If I can look into their process, because I agree. What we heard from the public was they didn't know where the complaint stood and if anybody was doing anything about it. And then, of course, one of the issues that Leslie has the right to have concern over is that it was something that had to get referred to law enforcement, and they don't have, any power over that. That becomes a law enforcement process, and that they have their own timeline. So I understand the public wants resolution. I think we have to come up with some language that is palatable for everybody.
All right. Well,
Because you can't always, like, even getting back to the complainant, you may not be telling the complainant everything that you did after you investigated. That's not necessarily DCP's role to say, oh, well, we, took away their registration and we did this and that. The complainant, I don't think, needs to have those details.
okay.
So I'm not sure how we do it.
So I'm thinking for now that we will leave it the recommendation is complaints should receive an immediate acknowledgement and timely resolution, period. And I appreciate what you're suggesting, Tracy, that, we look more into
It's just going to take more
how it's
time.
handled, but we just can't do that today.
Yep.
So, is there anyone that has an objection to, I understand, Sheldon, that you wanted to add a provision, a clause there that seems to have raised a couple of concerns from a couple of folks. So if it's okay with you, if you have no objection, we're just going to leave it the way it is. Okay.
My answer is I do have objection because the public did say that I never, just at the end, that what happened. And, arguments about, well, we didn't look at that, we looked at other things, but that's fine. You just say the complaint that was filed, we resolved it like this. I don't think this is a big deal. I would like to go with what DPH uses, I think that's reasonable. However, because we need to move this thing along, and I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to say, it's all right.
Thank you, Sheldon. I do appreciate that. And I understand, look, I understand there are a lot of nuances here that could probably improve the report. But we're just in a situation where the report is overdue. And I would like to get support for what we have here. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that there's probably a way to look into this before anything is implemented. But for the purposes of this report, I do appreciate you and Leslie and Tracy and the rest of the task force members kind of buying off on the way it's worded now. Complaint should receive an immediate acknowledgement and timely resolution. So that's where we'll leave it for now. And thank you all for your accommodation on that. So anything else in complaint resolution? No? Okay. Oh, Maria.
I do have a question on that third bullet where it says we want to clarify the complaint process for consumers. And then it adds in the option of mediation, which I think might confuse things a little more. And I do want to point out that the department made this great flyer, and I'm sorry my camera isn't working, so I can't hold it up, but it's this orange and navy flyer that says the Consumer's Guide to Homemaker Companion Agencies. And we're actually handing it out to our clients now when we go out to visit. And on the back page, it clearly states how to contact the Department of Consumer Protection and contact them for complaints. So I think maybe we can just reference that as an option. I do think throwing mediation out might confuse things.
Okay, so there's a couple of different things there. I think, do we reference that flyer elsewhere?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And we that's why I put my hand up. We do reference it back in the meetings and proceedings section. I referenced that flyer and the advertising guidelines flyer. Because there was so much discussion about the confusion, that guide actually does clarify fairly nicely a lot of things for the consumer, but the complaint process is in there.
And is there a link to it, or?
I linked it. Look back up, Cameron. I'm pretty sure I can't see much on my phone. Sorry.
And so what section, Tracy?
I think it's in that, it's not in the recommendations. It's back up in the meetings and proceedings. So maybe we just pull it from there.
Well, I don't know if we need to repeat it, but I just.
Well, there's advertising. Go up a little further. There, Consumer's Guide to Homemaker Companion Agencies.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't see, Leslie, I don't see any dates on things. So I just assume that if it's on your website, that's the most current, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So let me address Maria's other issue there. And I think hopefully, Maria, you're okay with the link to that. Yes. as we have it here in the report. But the issue about mediation, are you suggesting that you're opposed to the recommendation to provide a direct pathway to resolve issues such as mediation?
You know, I don't remember us discussing mediation in the past, and maybe I just missed it, but if everyone else is fine with it, I guess I can live with it. But gosh, I think it would just add such an extra layer of confusion for people that do have a problem as far as knowing which way to go, where to report.
Oh, thinking they could jump right to it? You mean that?
Yeah.
It is
yeah.
a pretty advanced step.
Yes. And it probably isn't going to end up being one of our priority recommendations. But
So, yeah.
but if
so
you can live with it, that's great.
I guess I can, yeah. I just wish it would focus more on the, the resource that's already out there with the link.
Okay, so then perhaps we do what would be the recommendation with the link, that we direct consumers to something?
There's a bullet. Yeah, I think so, because there's a bullet under that clarify complaint process. That second bullet, states should produce and distribute guidelines. They're there. So maybe we just emphasize or direct consumers to.
Should we say, for example, and then include the link?
That would be fine. In looking at these bullets, boy, there's a whole lot of ways for someone to file a complaint and many options to go to. And I guess if the senior advocates are okay with that, then maybe just list them all like this. Sure.
Okay.
I hope that link is there somewhere. It's a good document.
Okay. So thank you, Cameron, for including that link. And thank you, Maria, for raising this and also for being willing to support the idea of mediation. I agree, it's a little bit messy, but it's something that perhaps ultimately could be something that we move towards. Leslie, you have your hand up?
Just say, to some extent, we're doing some of that already. So maybe there's a more formal language, but we do mediate. So I'm not as concerned with, when I read that section, I wasn't terribly concerned about sort of the additional burden it might cause on DCP, because I feel like, well, we may need to to publicize this more, that a lot of this is already being done.
Should we say, rather than established, utilized?
I think that's fine. I'm fine either way. I think clarified is fine.
Then we'll leave
I don't
it.
think we have not clarified. So
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So we will leave that the way it is. And I just want to note that it is 1:36. We need to get through this and then vote on what our priorities are, and then vote on the whole report. So I'm going to keep us moving forward, and hopefully if we go over 2:00, that we won't lose too many people. So training, anybody have any issues or concerns with regard to the recommendations for training? Maria, you have your hand up?
I do. I just wanted to ask that we could stipulate in here companion and homemaker training versus personal care, because I really feel like if you're going to do, transfer people and do more of the hands-on personal care for a more frail person, that really is a different level of training than the people who do the more basic companion and homemaker skill level. And I don't know if there's a good way to phrase that, but I really wouldn't support that every single homemaker companion employee is fully trained to be able to, lift and transfer and do the more needy type of care.
Okay.
I think it's going to hurt the industry, because fewer people will want to do that and will have that training, and then they won't work for a homemaker companion agency in an industry that has a shortage of employees already.
Okay, so let me just make some concrete suggestions here, and I'm going to ask people as we're going forward now. If you have concrete changes that you want to see, put them on the table. And I'll probably speak for Leslie here. I can see the first bullet there says caregivers. So we probably do want to change that to homemakers and companions.
Employees is fine too, whichever.
Okay, I just was wondering if that would help Maria's issue that we're specifying that it is homemakers and companions in
right.
all of these, except the one, the fourth bullet that actually mentions PCAs.
Like, I guess that's a really good question, and because the way I read this was that it would be the employees of the HCAs, and so I guess I don't understand exactly how you would train an entity.
Okay.
As opposed to the employees.
Okay. I'm fine going with employees.
Which may not alleviate Maria's concerns, but I don't know how we would deal with this. I do have a couple of other comments on this.
Well, let me just go back to Maria.
Yep.
Maria, is there any concrete change here that you're suggesting?
Well, at the end, after certification, could you just add for personal care or for companion or homemaker services, or for personal or homemaker companion services, just to break it up a little bit?
So it would say require HCA employees to get trained and receive certification. What?
For personal or for homemaker companion services, if that makes sense to others.
Well, I was assuming it was all just for homemaker companion services, not for personal.
Well, and it is a little ambiguous. You know, what are you training people to do? So.
Okay, so the way I'm reading this is that it's for homemaker services and companion services.
That would be fine too. Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. So should we just say that for homemaker services and for companion services? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Leslie and then Tracy and then Christy. Leslie?
I just do want to note that the devil is in the details with this language, and I feel like I need to be on the record. So if we are requiring employees, and we've discussed this, so but it's what kind of training we require, who provides the training, whether or not it requires some form of a roster to track employees. Like, obviously that would change if it's us, our fiscal note. That's all, because it's, obviously more labor intensive if we are, providing, figuring out who, the training program, signing off on it. If we are then tracking employees to make sure they actually, are maintaining the training requirements and being certified. Like all of that may require more resources than we've provided currently, because it's not clear from this exactly how in depth this language would be if it were in bill format. So I just want to be on record on that, and that's all.
I gotcha. And that's really just about the fiscal note. Okay. Tracy and then Christy.
Yeah, I'll just so quickly, there is language in DPH regulations that, and it's very open. I was trying to look for it real quick, but I can provide it if it helps. And it's basically you train them to what they're expected to do, and it's so a nurse, if you take on a case that has a certain skill, your nurse should have that skill in order to take on that case. So it's within the regulations, though, not outside of the scope of services, but that they would be trained according to the plan of care and within regulation.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Tracy. That's a very good point. And that reminded me of one other thing I meant to say. So thank you, which is at some point when we go down this path with this language, we are going into licensure versus registration. That's all. And I just want to flag that, because everything at DPH is licensure. What HCAs currently are is a registration, which is why they're regulated at a different level than, say, our licensed trades or other occupations over here. So I just want to note that. I think that's an important distinction as well that people should be mindful of. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from Christy and then hopefully wrap on this.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I'm just flagging this, just the way I read this, it does seem initially that the training should incorporate, working with folks with memory loss I'm using the word mandatory as something that should be incorporated, as a regulatory piece, but then it seems like it's optional. So that seems to be not entirely clear, but I do recognize this is not something we're going to solve necessarily today. This is a recommendation. So any legislation that gets introduced will address this accordingly. But I just wanted to kind of flag the way I was reading this from the association standpoint.
I think that's a good point. All right, Tracy and Leslie, you still have your hands up?
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so, but let me just ask then, I'm not hearing any concrete changes that people want to that first bullet. I believe me, I understand Tracy's point that it could be illuminated a little bit more, and Christy's point that maybe it's not totally consistent with the next recommendation. But given where we are, I'm not hearing any specific changes. So Tracy, you still have your hand up?
No.
Okay.
I thought I lowered it.
Okay. Okay. So, so everybody is signing off then on that, as it's that section, as it stands, and we'll move on to the optional training. So yes, first we're saying, that there should be training on memory loss. And then we're saying, in addition, there could be optional training on memory loss. So concerns, anything on this before we move on to public awareness and education? Yeah, Leslie. And
Sorry,
Sheldon.
I wanted to go quickly and it was too long to raise my hand. I just, again, want to flag, our concern about, well, we don't have a problem with optional training, what agencies want to do there. It's the advertising piece that concerns us here. So, which we're not at, but I just want to flag, like, that's a, concern, obviously, when we're mentioning medical diagnoses and training. So I know we're getting to advertising, but I just want to.
Okay. Okay, we'll take that up when we get there.
Thank
Sheldon?
you.
Sorry, I appreciate the identification by Christy of the inconsistency. It is inconsistent. And I wasn't sure. I mean, personally, I'd be fine with making it mandatory, but I wasn't sure if there was objection to that. I guess the question is, if there's no objection to it, why not change that? I mean, it is redundant or inconsistent, and we could just take the language. And by the way, just to point out, it's in the second bullet under optional, it's memory loss or cognitive impairment versus just memory loss. And I think there's advantages to including cognitive impairment as well. But in any event, we could just, move that all to be part of the mandatory training.
I think we might lose some folks. Yeah, I see Leslie putting her hand up.
Yeah, DCP would have issues with that,
Yeah.
since now you're requiring training for a medical diagnosis, which again, then we get back into this gray area. Sorry.
That's
Well,
why I was suggesting.
I mean, but we say it there, training in the green line stuff. Training is mandatory, and in the same bullet, training should incorporate education providing non-medical service to persons with memory loss. So it's already there. Unless you're disagreeing with that.
Memory loss could be many things. Below, you're talking about an actual medical diagnosis.
What, cognitive impairment? Is that what you mean?
I mean, Alzheimer, this is where we get, yes, I think there is dementia, and dementia is not memory loss could be anything. Dementia is a little bit different. I think, a distinction, no? I think there is. And so this other section of bullets with optional training refers to the Alzheimer's Association. There's a whole slew of things here that gets in, and cognitive impairment is also medical. So that's my concern.
I have a suggestion that might be really simple. How about if we just add the word additional? So where it says optional additional training, because we've already said it's mandatory, some training for memory loss is required.
Yeah.
And now we're just specifying that.
Okay, additional works. I think optional additional training. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheldon and Leslie. Anything else on this section of training? Great. Okay, so we can move down to public awareness and education. Any concerns here? Great. Thank you. So advertising, and we know we're going to hear from Leslie on advertising. Can Cameron, do you mind just so we can remind ourselves, the main bullets here are strengthen advertising guidelines and state interpretation of advertising. Then there's address the new DCP guidelines prohibiting advertising of, I think we're missing an of actually there, of any advertising of any type of memory, Alzheimer's, or dementia care. Okay, so there's just those two, but they have some sub bullets below them. So what, Leslie, do you want to weigh in here, or anybody else?
In terms of the first section, strengthen advertising guidelines and state interpretation of advertising, DCP, I don't think we have any objections to that section, that first section of bullets. The second section, we have some things, but the first section really just it says, we need to very much clarify this, and that's fine. We agree that we need to continue to clarify it. We think we have, but
so the second bullet, do you have any concerns there?
Yes, I mean, that's where we well, addressing it's fine, but the third bullet under that second bullet, if you will, that third sub bullet, allow ads to say employees versus caregivers is one thing, but what they're allowed to say they're trained in is sort of not clear here, which I think is the point, to leave it sort of more vague for policymakers to decide, I suppose. We would have concerns otherwise, but addressing the guidelines so that they're sort of out there for policymakers to debate is fine.
Okay, so are you okay with this then?
As long as caregivers is changed to employees.
Yep, which it was.
We welcome the dialogue with policymakers.
Okay, great. Michael?
Thanks. I just wanted to add, I know there's a lot of emphasis on the word training. What about replacing it simply with the word educated? I think that fits.
With the word what?
Educated. Instead of training, because that, that there's no clear-cut definition, kind of, but they must have an awareness of the whole concept of memory care, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., the whole entire umbrella. So I think it's really educating them, kind of more so than training them.
So I would have a concern with that. I'd like to hear from other folks what you're thinking, but we did just have that discussion about training that we're recommending, and so then this is consistent with that. Okay. And education, I really feel like is, as you said, it's probably a more difficult term to quantify or qualify or define, and so I just think that might lead to problems where training is pretty clear. Was there training provided or not training provided? But I'm happy to hear what other folks think. And I see that Chris would like to speak on this issue. So Chris.
Thank you. I much prefer the word training over education because I think that lends itself to a specific criteria. So a training is created, for example, that will address whatever the needs are for that particular training, versus the term education, which could be done in multiple ways and doesn't necessarily indicate any specificity.
So Michael, are you okay leaving it the way it is?
Yeah, I could understand that. I'm just, yes, without question. I just was looking at it just for the awareness and understanding. Perhaps that's not the appropriate word. So I agree.
And Christy weighed in the chat and agreed as well that training is a better term to use in this context. Okay, anything else on advertising? Everybody's on board. All right, what else do we have? We have, okay, so best practices nationwide is up next. And so this is the area where we talk about two main concepts. One is the transfer to DPH, and then the other is that they need more resources. They would need more resources in order to do this. So Leslie, tell me what you want to say about this.
I just want to just flag that this piece I am going to, DCP is abstaining from, for obvious reasons. I think everyone can understand that we can't take a position on this. So I just, sorry.
That's fine. When we do the vote, maybe we will vote on two things, the entire report and then this section in which you can then abstain.
Thank you.
Does that work for everyone? Because you're not objecting to it. You're not
We have no position, zero position on this.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, great. We're moving along very well. Next.
If I could just say, so you said we would be able to refrain from or oppose this, because I still don't feel like I have enough information. And when I look at what the Department of Public Health has right now for regulations for a homemaker, I don't know if I have it in front of me, but the Homemaker Home Health Aid Agency, it's quite extensive. They already kind of have that framework in place. So I guess in my mind, if I knew that companions and homemakers would be treated differently over at DPH, that would make sense to me. But I just feel like I don't have that information, and it's really hard to decide that it makes sense to transition over.
Okay, so there's a couple of options here. It sounds to me like you're not necessarily opposing it, but you would like the opportunity to abstain from this particular one as well. Is that what I'm hearing, Maria?
Well, my real preference would be to have more, to notice that I might vote for it if I had more information. I just feel like I don't have enough information on how it would work to know if it makes sense.
But we're, unfortunately, today is the day that we have to vote. So we either have to vote to support it or oppose it or abstain as Leslie would like to do on this particular one. So I guess tell me what you would like to do, because honestly, I really feel like more information at this point is not just not practical. So I see Tracy has her hand up, and maybe you have a solution.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is it doesn't say that it would be to be regulated under the Homemaker Home Health Aid regulations. It just says oversight should be transferred to DPH. Develop a transition plan, et cetera. And then the last bullet says DPH should regulate homemaker companion as they do the other services. So I don't know if we want to just update some language in here, but it's not stating we're looking for them to transfer over and get all of the homemaker companion agencies licensed as a homemaker home health aid agency. That's not the intent, because that is a medical model with RN oversight.
Right.
Would it be helpful to add to that first bullet? The second sentence says the two agencies should develop a transition plan. What if we added there, with input from the industry? Would that help you? Because it would kind of give you another bite at the apple there, that DCP and DPH would have to get, input from the industry.
How about with input from the industry on regulations? Or, because I think that's it. We can't, I'm a strong believer that we can't use the homemaker home health aid regulations and just simply transfer people over. That's not the intent. I don't know what, and it sounds like Maria has grave concerns about that as well.
Well, I do think that adding that language and proposed makes sense. And I think, could we go a step further and just say under a new definition of non-medical in-home services, just to really stress the non-medical aspect of it?
Okay, so it would say, where would you add that?
I think you were at the first bullet, right? The two agencies should develop a transition plan.
Yeah, I was going to say with input from the industry,
Yep.
which is, helping you weigh in. But I think maybe in the third bullet is where we would want to add what Tracy was suggesting there, or you were suggesting, Maria. Now I don't remember, about, I think it was you, Maria, who said, tell me again what you suggested. Should regulate.
I think we just need the words non-medical in there. So non-medical homemaker companion agencies in a new category or something, as a new category.
Should promulgate regulations.
Well, it's regulate. They're regulating them.
Yeah, regulate.
Just if you could say as a new category, I don't know if it's a category. They're homemaker home health aid agencies. Is that considered a category of licensure? But I just think we should clarify that it's separate and it's non-medical.
So I'm just thinking out loud here. DPH should add regulation of non-medical homemaker companion agencies to facilities that they currently regulate.
Well, maybe at the end, instead of as they do other services, just insert something about as a new category of service, or as a new type of service.
Sure. That's good. As a new type of service, period. Then we get rid of them.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Sheldon?
Yeah, I guess you didn't see what I put in the chat, which is what I was suggesting is leaving that language, but change that you just took out, but to say they should be regulated in the manner that DPH regulates the others. That's saying it's not going to be the same exact, sets of rules and stuff. It's just, but I think that what people want is they want that framework and that structure of what DPH does.
Okay, should we add that to the end of the sentence there? In the manner it regulates other entities? To our folks.
I agree. I like as a new type of service.
Yeah. In the manner
in the manner it regulates other entities.
Okay, great. Everybody's okay with that?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything else on recommendations? Sheldon, you have your hand up. Okay. So this is the part where we're all in agreement on all the recommendations except the one place where DCP said that they do not and will not support the use of the word care. And now what we're going to be able to do, hopefully Cameron has set up for us a way to vote on priorities. And I am going to, I'm going to call for a vote, or, you know, your input, but I actually first wanted to use my privilege as chair to urge members to vote for certain ones. And I'm just going to lay out my reasoning for what I'm going to be voting for, and for your consideration before your vote. Of course, everyone is welcome and encouraged to vote for how they want. But I just want to tell you what I'm going to be voting for and why. So here are my top three. I think we're voting for three priorities. And so number one, I'm going to vote for, and I don't think they're rank ordered. They're just three we get to vote for. Cameron is saying yes, is additional resources. And my reasoning there is that, you know, we have seen this significant increase over the past several years from 380 to over 900 agencies, and it's the same staff level at DCP. And I think that we have seen, you know, concerns raised about DCP's ability to keep up with that, with the level of staff that they have. They are doing a great job with the resources that they have, but I think we all recognize that that 900 agencies is a lot to be regulating. So I think additional resources, no matter what other recommendations go forward, ought to be a number one priority. Number two is somewhat along the same lines, and I think this was originally raised by Michael. The thought that 900, there's something wrong if we have 900 of these agencies in such a small state, and we have a whole category of recommendations having to do with stricter requirements for agencies. And I do think that is an area that will help cull down the number of agencies that we have. So another priority for me is going to be on the stricter requirements for agencies. And then the third one for me is going to be moving to DPH. And I think that really gets at addressing a major problem that we have seen in our discussions, which is the confusion, the overlap, the system that we have in Connecticut is just not used anywhere else in the country, and to make us more in alignment with other states and maybe what are best practices, I think that it should be moved to DPH. So those are the three areas that I'm going to be voting for priorities. That's additional resources, stricter requirements, and transferring to DPH. But with that said, please, vote for whatever you think is most important. And I think that Cameron should be able to tabulate immediately. He has his hand up, so let's hear what Cameron's going to say.
I just had one technical note to add. Because we are making this poll through Zoom, it only allows a maximum of 10 options per question, but there are 13 recommendations that people in their emails sent back as priorities. So you're supposed to pick 3 options. It's a total of 2 questions, 10 in the first, 3 in the second, split up randomly. Just pick 3 from those 13, not per each question. That's all.
Does everybody understand that? 3 total. Although they'll kind of be divided, and you're going to have to look, I guess, in 2 different spots for them, but for the options. Okay, yes, and thank you. That's a good clarification that these are based on what you all sent in. So anytime you're ready, unless there are questions, there they are. So no one can see what you're voting for. Priority 2, don't forget. So you see priority recommendations part 1 and priority recommendations part 2. So you can go ahead and click your 3 and then hit submit. Oh, so it's not letting me submit because I picked all 3 from the priority number 1, and it seems to think that I need to.
I'll see if I can edit that right now quickly.
So can we see the other one too while we're, before
Yeah,
we
you scroll
submit?
down, scroll down.
Oh, I got it. Sorry. Got it.
So it doesn't let you submit if you only select from question 1 or from question 2, is what I'm
It
hearing?
says 1 of 2 answered, and it's not letting me submit.
So maybe put an NA in 2 and an NA in 1 in case.
I'll do that quickly. Let me end this poll. I can recreate a new identical one with just an NA in each question.
Thank you.
Apologies for that. This is
Nope.
going to take just a moment to recreate.
While he's doing that, I would just ask to make sure that nobody has any concerns. We didn't go through the appendices. I'm assuming nobody would have any concerns about the appendices. Now's your time to say if you do, because what's going to happen after we vote on the priority recommendations is that we're going to vote on the report as it stands, so that we get everybody on record that they're voting for it. The one thing that we are going to do is pull off the recommendation to transfer to DPH so that Leslie can abstain from that. Sheldon?
Yeah, for the supplement, which is the fiscal note, I understand Leslie kindly provided a sort of a job description of the investigator, and I wonder whether that could be or should be included, packaged with the fiscal note. Does that make sense?
Or
That's
under the
fine.
appendix?
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Mm.
And so we'll if you can remind Cameron to do that, because I'm sure he's very focused right now on getting the survey done. Can I do want to just note that we have Pamela Brown and Dante Costa on here who should not be voting. So
Jennifer Cavallero.
and Jennifer Cavallero, thank you. So Jennifer, Pam, and Dante, if you can just confirm that you will not be voting because you're sitting in on the meeting, but not members of the task force.
I can see how many people submit questions in total. So because Anna and Mairead are not present, I can see if more than 8 people submit.
Okay, thank you.
So as long as all members vote, then everyone will be accounted for.
Okay, all right.
And the second poll is ready to go live. So putting it live now.
Okay. So everyone picks what they want. And if you're only picking from one section, on the other section, you have to say NA. Okay, mine went through. And while people are voting, Cameron, I don't know if you heard that Sheldon recommended that we create another appendix for the job description for special investigator, which Leslie did send to us.
I can certainly do that. So Appendix C will be the one discussed earlier, and there will be an Appendix D, as you said there. And that'll be job description for special investigator. I'm just confirming.
Does that work, Sheldon? Okay. Thank you.
And on the, am I looking, oh, let me just, sorry. I apologize. Let me just disregard my interruption. I just, well, actually don't. The fiscal note that you have on the bottom of this now, is it the full fiscal note and not what I had sent earlier?
Cameron's going to tell us.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine, because I had sent over, you had sent originally the fiscal note for investigator only, and that was included.
Right.
And then you sent the more comprehensive one,
Yeah.
which Cameron said was going to be included, but
Okay,
we just haven't.
That's fine. Thank you.
It is included. Okay, great.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Cameron.
Okay, I see that 7 people have answered so far. And I see that 8 people have answered the question. So I'm gonna end the poll, which should make the total results public. And remember, no personal votes are public here. Share results. Is this visible to everybody?
It is. And thank you. That's terrific. So it looks like the most popular recommendation, or I shouldn't say popular, but the recommendation that most members thought should be top priority is transitioning oversight from DCP to DPH. The second priority recommendation, according to the poll, would be adequate resources for the existing system. And then the third, there's nothing down lower, right? Just making sure.
No, the bottom, the ones in section 2 only got 1 vote each.
Okay, so the third would then be adopting stricter registration processes and requirements. Those would become the top 3 priority recommendations that we would forward. So the purpose of this is that we're forwarding hopefully we're going to adopt a full report that has a number of recommendations. And sometimes it's very difficult to enact all of the recommendations all at once. And this was an opportunity just to get a sense from the task force members about what would be the top priority things. Not that we're not supporting everything that's in the report, but just that these are the top priorities for the task force. So I thank you for doing that. And Cameron will put that in that little section there about what the top priorities are. Okay, terrific. Thank you all for doing that. So I think with that, at 2:15, we are, unless I hear differently from anyone else, that we're ready to vote on submitting the report with the changes that we made today. And after we vote, we will give 24 hours to vote to members who are not with us. And I think that we did we lose somebody else? I feel like we did. I don't know. So whoever's a member that is not with us right now to vote will be getting it from Cameron, and they will have 24 hours to vote on it. So what I'm going to do is ask for a motion to adopt the entire report except for the transfer, which is actually our top priority, except for the transfer to DPH. And we're going to vote on that separately because we have a member who wants to abstain. So I'll call for a motion to adopt the entire report.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Thank you. Tracy, any second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christy. Seconded by Christy. So any further discussion? If not, are we doing a voice vote?
I can call the roll down the membership, just so we have it on record,
Sure, sure.
unless you want to do a voice vote.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So, Ann Foley. Oh, sorry,
Aye.
I should say this is a motion this is a roll call vote on the motion to submit the report as written with the edits discussed in today's meeting. Members not present will have 24 hours to vote by email, starting immediately after the meeting. This is a vote on the entire report except the transition to DPH recommendation.
Perfect.
Ann Foley,
Aye.
Christy Cavell,
Aye.
Chris Warner,
Aye.
Tracy Wodach,
Aye.
Michael Savoy,
Aye.
Maria Serino,
Aye.
Sheldon Tubman,
Aye.
Leslie O'Brien.
Aye.
Terrific. I don't think you need to read the results because it was all in favor. So the next part that we are going to vote on is the recommendation to transition to DPH. So I will call for a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Tracy?
Tracy.
Moved by Tracy.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, second again by Christy. Any
And
further discussion? Okay, so Cameron will call the roll on this one too.
So this is a vote on the passage specifically referring a transition of HCA oversight to DPH. Ann Foley,
Aye.
Christy Cavell,
Aye.
Chris Warner,
Aye.
Tracy Wodach,
Aye.
Michael Savoy,
Aye.
Maria Serino,
Aye.
Sheldon Tubman,
Aye.
Leslie O'Brien.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. So I do want to address now, now that the report, the entire report has been approved. First of all, thank you for that. And second of all, I know Michael had asked me by email yesterday or the day before. So what happens now? What are the next steps? So I wanted to just address that with the entire task force. I believe that the task force itself ceases to exist once we submit the report. Is that correct, Cameron? Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay, so but that doesn't mean that our work is necessarily over. We have put together this report, and it is just recommendations for policymakers, and specifically the legislature to take up. And so what they do is they don't vote on this report. What they do is take this report and identify places that they want to change policy by law. They want to add resources by appropriations, and they will take actions as they see fit. But what I'm happy to do is to meet with the chairs of the committee that it is going to. I know that Senator Miller, and I think that she was in the chat, that she had to leave. She was listening in, and she did have to leave. But I know that she has been very active in attending the meetings and participating a bit in the meetings as well. So I think she's fairly reasonably familiar with the discussion, the background, and the recommendations. So she may not need anything further from me as the chair or you all from the task force, but we are here to support legislators if they have questions going forward, if they have concerns, anything that they need to know. And certainly if there are going to be bills out there on this topic, I can keep an eye on that and let you all know if I see anything coming forward that people may want to weigh in on. Task force members are certainly welcome and encouraged to weigh in as you see fit, representing your own industry and your own interests to move forward with these recommendations. So I'd encourage you to do that if you like to do that, but you don't have to. And why don't I stop there and just see if there's any questions about next steps or going forward or what might take place. Okay, that's great. So what I wanted to do is to close by thanking you all, every member of the task force, for sticking with this, coming to the meetings. We weren't able to meet in person, but meeting by Zoom. We've had some long meetings, and you've done work in between, and you've really all been very respectful of one another and your differing opinions, and I appreciate that. And you've all been very responsible in terms of reading documents and weighing in a thoughtful manner, which I appreciated very much. Special thanks to Leslie, because I know that, as the agency that's providing oversight of this, it can be difficult to hear things that might be perceived as criticisms from the general public and elsewhere. And your participation was really on point and so helpful to us all along the way. So I want to thank you for that, and thanks especially to Sheldon and Tracy, who stepped up when our co-chair Mark was no longer able to participate, and it was at the time when we had to put together this report. So Sheldon and Tracy really put it together. So I'm really very, very grateful for them just doing that. And mostly I want to thank Cameron, who I didn't know before this either. And really, there is no way that we could have done this without you, your technical expertise, your just really following along with exactly what we were doing, and putting everything right up there for us to see and to react to, and making changes in real time, and just keeping us organized and coordinated, sending everything out. And I know that the aging committee is going to miss you very much. I don't know if everyone heard that Cameron is leaving the aging committee and going over to the labor committee. And so we wish him the best over there with all kinds of new issues and policies to get familiar with, and new people too. So thanks so much to Cameron. So I think that's all we need to do. And I guess I don't think we need to move for adjournment. I think we can just adjourn. So thank you again, everybody, for participating. And Cameron will get out the final report to you all as it goes over to the aging committee. And I'm available if you guys have any questions going forward.
Well, a special thank you to you, Anne, for your leadership.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
1000%. Thank you so much, Anne.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
All right. And we'll see you all during session, I guess.